start this series, and we're going to talk about politics and religion and relationships and Jesus and you and me. That's what we're going to talk about over these next 4 weeks. And you might be thinking to yourself, now, why would we do a series like this? Well, in like 60 days, there is an election that is coming. And I don't know about you, but if you begin to look around at sort of the landscape around us politically, here in the United States, it feels like the divided states of America, right? Not the United States of America. And so how is it that we can become undivided, right? How is it that we can kind of change maybe the way that we act and we treat people in this political season? And I know some of you are sitting there and you're squirming and you're sweating because you heard that word politics from the stage, and maybe it's your first week and you thought, man, the Try 5 sounds really great. Now you're like, I'm not even going to do Try 2 because I'm out of here after today. So just let me set some expectations from us over these next few weeks. So again, that you'll come back and join us. Here's the first thing I would say. We don't talk politics here at The Journey. I don't know if you've noticed, this church is very diverse. We are diverse socially, economically, ethnically. But you might be surprised, we're diverse politically too. We have some people that hang out on the right side and some that hang out on the left side and people that are right there in the middle. And I love that about this place, is that we are diverse in any way that you can think. Now, maybe you're like, but why don't you talk politics? Well, the reason's pretty simple. That's not our mission. Our mission isn't to say, here's the candidate you need to vote for, here's the party you need to follow, here's a platform that you need to accept. That's not our mission. Our mission here at The Journey is to help more and more people take their next steps towards Jesus. And if politics is our mission, we know we are going to alienate so many people from meeting and knowing and following Jesus. And that is our mission, to help more and more people take their next steps towards Jesus. And so that is why we are doing this series. We're not going to talk politics, even though it's a political series, and you'll understand what I'm talking about as we go through the rest of our day. Other thing I want to set out there is I'm not going to talk about my politics to you. Do I have political views? Yes, I do. Do I have a political stance? Yes, I do. Do I know who I'm going to vote for in this election? Yes, I do. Who is it? That's none of your business, right? I don't need to tell you this. And here's a big part of this. When a pastor says, here's who you should vote for, this is a political party, it breaks relationships, it breaks apart churches. But here's what's most important to me. I don't want to go to a church where everybody thinks exactly like I do politically. And again, that's why I love this church. I love this place. I don't want to be around people that think the same way I do. And so I'm not going to share my views because I know what that can do in the church setting. But here's the last piece to this. We're not going to tell you who to vote for. We're not going to tell you what to think politically. And we're not going to keep you from being political. Vote for who you want to vote for. Think politically how you want to think. Be political outside these walls and outside of groups and outside of anything that's church related. Be as political as you want. That's part of the beauty of us living in America today, that we can be political. And so we're not going to challenge your politics. What we're going to do is over these next few weeks, we're going to challenge us spiritually, especially those of us who say we follow Jesus. And so to help us do that, we're going to be asking the same question over these 4 weeks. We're going to ask this question: can you separate your political filter from your faith filter? Can you separate your political filter from your faith filter? And we're going to ask this question because we're not good at all at separating these two. Now, hear me out. I'm not saying your faith should not influence your politics. That's not what I'm saying at all. The problem is our faith and our politics have become so intertwined, we don't know where one begins and one ends. I love this quote from Tim Keller in his book, Counterfeit Gods. He says, we look upon our political leaders as messiahs, our political policies as saving doctrine, and turn our political activism into a kind of religion. I'd probably put it this way. Our politicians have become our gods, our parties, our religion, and platforms have become our theology. So can we separate our political filter from our faith filter? And once again, that's what we're going to talk about over these 4 weeks. Well, as we begin today, we're going to talk about being civil. Can we be civil when we have different ideologies and views and values and beliefs as other people politically? Can we be civil? Look at this quote. There are approximately 1,010,300 words in the English language, but I could never string enough words together to properly express how much I want to hit you with a chair. Supposedly, Alexander Hamilton said this to Thomas Jefferson about 200 years ago, and then right after this, they sang a duet together. I don't know if you... That's a Hamilton joke. I've never seen it. Don't plan on it. But anyway, they didn't really sing a duet as far as we know, and there's some question of whether this is a little bit myth and a little bit reality kind of mixed together. But I don't know. I read that and I think, yeah, I could probably see somebody like Alexander Hamilton saying this to somebody like Thomas Jefferson 200 years ago, right? But I also can see somebody saying something similar to this about 14 miles from here a couple of weeks ago on Capitol Hill. And I also can see that some of us may have said that to someone, something similar yesterday, because we got into a political conversation with someone else. I mean, these words could have been 200 years ago, but they would very well be something that we would hear today. And as I look at them, like, that's not very civil at all. Can we be civil when we're so divided? And so we're going to spend our time today looking at a passage out of the book of James. This is in the New Testament. And we've used this passage here before. We've talked about it before and certain other topics that we've done. But I wonder if you've ever thought about this passage with a political filter on, okay? So kind of put that in the back of your mind today. James chapter 1, starting with verse 19. James says, "Understand this, my dear brothers and sisters. You must all be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to get angry." I hate candy corn. Absolutely hate that stuff. And there's some of you that are here right now and you heard that and you're like, the Holy Spirit is speaking through you today, Chad. Right? Because you agree with me. You're like, I hate candy corn too. When we leave here and give me high fives and your fist bumps and like, man, that's the best message I ever heard about candy corn in my entire life. And because you're like me, you don't like candy corn. But there's another group of you in here, because people have some really strong opinions about candy corn. You've heard me say, I hate candy corn, and you're looking at me right now and you're like, you are a sinner. You are the Antichrist. You're a horrible person. And so you're going to shoot me these crazy, terrible emails this week and text messages and probably buy bags of candy corn and put in my office door just to get back at me. Because again, people have some pretty strong opinions when it comes to something like candy corn. Here's the deal. I said 4 words. I hate candy corn. That's all I said. All I said was that I hate candy corn. And you may disagree with that, but do you know why I hate it? Let me tell you why I hate it. When I was a kid, our family took a vacation, and we ended up in Omaha, Nebraska at the candy corn factory that's there. And security was a little lax back in those days with certain things. And so there was this big old vat of candy corn. I was trying to look in it a little bit better, and I actually fell into this vat of candy corn. I just remember like the smell and the feeling of it, and I was just like, this is the grossest thing in the entire world. And so I don't like candy corn. I hate candy corn because of what happened to me as a kid. And that story is totally fabricated. There's not 1 ounce of any part of that is true at all, okay? You want to know why I hate candy corn? It's not real candy. Can I get an amen? Amen. Yeah. It's a colored piece of wax. It feels like wax. It tastes like wax. I think if you put a wick in it and you lit it, it would blight and burn just like a candle would, right? Candy corn is an abomination to real candy that is out there. And some of you are like, yeah, we're definitely not coming back after this week. Why am I talking about candy corn? What does it have to do with politics? What does it have to do with something like faith? What does James say? He says, be quick to listen. What if that story were true? What if it were true? What if that was the reason that I hated candy corn? But your response when you heard those 4 words was to disagree with me or to get angry with me because I said I hate candy corn. Well, if that was your response, you would never have taken the time to understand my story. But see, this is how we function in our society today. We hear something that we don't like or we don't agree with. Instead of stopping to listen and beginning to understand where this other individual is coming from, we allow anger to be our first response. Now, I'm going to talk about anger here in just a second. But let me ask you this. When's the last time you had a healthy, civil conversation with someone who has different political views than you? 10 years ago? 20 years ago? Never? If that's the case, have you ever asked yourself why? Well, I can tell you why. It's because we don't take time to listen to others. We don't take time to hear their experiences or to understand where those beliefs are coming from, especially when they're very different than our own. But see, when it comes to any relationship we have, one of the most important things we can do is that we can be quick to listen. And the starting point for any healthy dialogue, any healthy conversation, to be civil with other people, is that we listen first so that we can begin to understand who they are and their story and their experience. And here's James, who says, be quick to listen. But then what's the next thing he says here? He says, be slow to speak. Let me talk to the guys in here right now that are married, okay? I'm getting ready to stereotype, so forgive me. But guys, how many times have you spoken first and listened second to your wife? Once? Twice? Congratulations, you've been married like 3 days, right? It's probably more like me, 2,452 times. I know that because Kara's counted them out for me like, hey, she hasn't really done that. But it feels like that sometimes. Guys, we're really bad at listening. We're really, really bad at being quick to speak. Kara and I have been married for 25 years. I got a lot of experience in this. I can tell you that most of the tensions that we have felt in our relationship has been because of this guy, right? Because I have failed to listen quickly and to speak slowly. And maybe it's because I want to fix something. I'm a fixer. I like to fix things. Well, here's the problem. Let me fix that for you instead of understanding where Kara is coming from. We also say dumb things because we just don't want to have a conversation, and we jump in and we don't stop to listen. Again, this is true for any relationship we have. It is so important that we are quick to listen and that we are slow to speak. Because when we speak quickly, we're only interested in one thing. We're only interested in ourselves. That I'm going to share my stance, I'm going to share my viewpoints, my ideas, my politics, and guess what? They only make sense to me. But when we're quick to listen and slow to speak, we can understand that individual better, and I truly believe over time, we could be more civil in those conversations. So James is like, hey, here's the deal. Be quick to listen, be slow to speak. And then he says, be slow to get angry. This is the place that we are right now in our society. We are an angry group of people. We get on social media and people are angry. We watch TV interviews and people are angry. Text messages that we send back and forth to people are angry texts. The emails that we send back and forth, we see that anger. Maybe even face-to-face in conversations that we're having with someone else, there is that anger that is there. We go to the public spaces and we watch people fight because they're angry at each other because of the differences in their politics. Anger so often is step number one for us when it comes to the differences we have with others politically. But guess what that step of anger, what it does? It breaks relationships. It brings about bitterness and hurt and pain. And oh, by the way, when we start with anger, it really just brings about more and more anger. But you notice what James says here? He doesn't start with anger, does he? That's not where he begins. He says, be quick to listen, slow to speak, and then he says, be slow to be angry. Why are these steps so important? Well, look at the next verse in James 1, verse 20. Human anger does not produce the righteousness God desires. So get rid of all the filth and evil in your lives and humbly accept the word God has planted in your hearts, for it has the power to save your souls. You probably have already picked a side in this election. And if you're a follower of Christ, and let's say you're a Republican, you probably think that absolutely, and you're absolutely convinced that Jesus would be a Republican. If you're a Democrat and you're a follower of Christ, you're probably absolutely convinced that Jesus would be a Democrat. If you're part of the Green Party and you're a follower of Christ, you're probably absolutely convinced that Jesus would be a part of the Green Party. I mean, we could go on and on and on here because there's this weird thing where Christians think Jesus would align with my party's beliefs, values, and platforms. And I truly believe it's why so many of us who say we are Christians, why we are so angry with people who have a different view, view of politics than we do. It's because we go around and we think Jesus would be on our side. Ask yourself, why is it I think that? Like, where did this idea come from? Well, I think there's three agendas that are at play for all of us. There's my agenda. Those are my ideologies, my beliefs, my politics. And my agenda is influenced by my past. It's influenced by my relationships from the past. It's influenced by my upbringing. It's influenced by my relationships now. It's influenced by the experiences I've had in my life. It's influenced by the specific news outlets I watch or read. It's influenced by algorithms today. Because when you start clicking on similar articles and similar posts, and these algorithms start to work like, hey, this is what this person needs to see and read. And so it's influenced by algorithms. And hopefully, in some ways, it's influenced by my faith. But that's my agenda. But then there's another agenda. There's their agenda. That's their ideologies, their ideas, their politics. And guess what that's been influenced by? Upbringing, relationships, experiences, specific news outlets, algorithms, and even their faith. But of course, my agenda is right. And their agenda is not right. Why? Because it's different than mine politically. But then there's a third agenda here. There is God's agenda. But here's the crazy thing about God's agenda. When it's my agenda or when it's their agenda, we look at God's agenda, we think and we believe that God's agenda is just like mine, that God fully agrees with what my agenda is. And they believe that God fully agrees with whatever their agenda may be too. I hate to break this to you, and this is maybe a little controversial, but that's my controversial statement for today. As much as we try to make God political, God is not a Republican. God is not a Democrat. God is not a libertarian. God is not part of the Green Party. God is not a socialist. God is not a part of any party. And if Jesus were here today, he would not be your party spokesperson. And if Jesus were here today, he would not be your political social influencer, so more people would follow your candidate. God's agenda is so much bigger and better and more powerful than my agenda, than their agenda. Because God has a mission for us to live out. But yet we are stuck in trying to push my agenda on someone else. We are stuck fighting their agenda. And we miss so often living out God's agenda, God's mission here on this earth. And so when my agenda is most important and I'm trying to fight their agenda, what happens? We become angry people. And what does James say about anger? He says, human anger does not produce the righteousness God desires. When we are angry at other people because of politics, that is not God's desire for you and for me. Ask yourself some questions. Do you get easily angered at other people's political beliefs and ideas? Are you constantly fighting others and their politics? Do you find that the people you're around all the time think exactly like you? They believe like you do politically, because if any of this is true, then it's all about your agenda. And it's not about God's. How do we check that out? How do we make sure that the agenda that we're following is God's agenda? Well, look down at verse 21. James says, humbly accept the word God has planted in your heart. Kind of weird how things happen in terms of putting series together. Definitely Holy Spirit, not because Chad's really smart. But we just finished this whole series about the fruit of the Spirit for 10 weeks, right? Came out of Galatians chapter 5, 22 and 23. And if you look at it, Paul says, here's the deal. Paul says, if God's Spirit is living in you, like if you fully are following Jesus, God's Spirit is in you, and you're going to live a certain way. You're going to have these certain characteristics and attributes that are going to be a part of who you are. And so we went through this, right? The love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. And so maybe you came out of that series like, that was really good. Like that's what I need to do. That's now how I need to live my life. And I'm going to pray for this fruit to be produced in me, except when it comes to my politics, right? That's the one place I'm going to put a barrier up. I'm going to be political however I want to be political. And yet it's like, but no, you said you follow Christ. These are the attributes that we're supposed to carry in our lives. And yet as we look at our lives politically, I think we see less and less of these fruit being lived out by those of us who call ourselves Christian. Can we be civil? Can we live these out when our politics are different than others today? How can we make sure that we're not angry people like the world around us? Well, we humbly accept God's word that has been planted in us, and we live out these fruit in our life every day, which means we are not people that are jumping into fights just to fight because we have differences politically. We are working harder to be civil and Christ-like in a place that is politically on fire, if you will, today, where we are so divided. So how can we make sure that we're not divided? How can we make sure that we are working hard to be more civil? How can we make sure we're putting our faith filter ahead of our political filter? I'm going to leave with you today these 4 questions that I think are so important for all of us to ask when it comes to who we are as followers of Christ and who we are in this political season. Here's question number 1. Is what I'm going to say or share or post, is it true? There's a lot of lies out there, right? Lies about candidates, lies about parties and platforms. There's conspiracy theories that are all over the place, articles that we read and that are shared with us, we share with other people. There's disinformation of all kinds on social media. And then let's throw an AI video today, right? You can't even tell what's real and what's fake anymore. And yet we see this stuff, we read this stuff, and we keep watching it, and we keep sharing it, we keep telling this to other people. But here's what Paul says in Colossians 3:9. He says, don't lie to each other, for you have stripped off your old sinful nature and all its wicked deeds. If you're a follower of Christ, you're saying, hey, I have this new life. Hey, I'm living out these fruit in my life, these attributes in my life. And so I gotta make sure that I'm not telling lies. So ask yourself, is what I'm going to say or post or share, is it true? Like, have you vetted this information? Have you looked up more details? Have you taken time to consider the full scope of what you may be sharing? What I find is most of us don't. Like, we'll see something, and we're like, I can't believe that happened. And then we're sharing it everywhere. And we see this happen on social media quite a bit. Something will come up, and everybody's like, that is true. And they begin to share it. And over the next couple of hours and days, maybe even weeks, the truth comes out, and it's like, oh, all that stuff I posted before that I shared with others wasn't true. When we share untruths, we are causing division. Is what I'm going to say or share or post, is it true? Question number 2, is what I'm going to say helpful? Maybe some of you have experienced gossip before about you, and it's not a pleasant thing to experience. But for some reason, we just love gossip. We love to share rumors and to share gossip. And maybe sometimes there's a little bit of truth in there, but as you know with gossip, there might be a little truth, but there's a lot of embellishment that goes on around that. When you think about gossip, is it helpful to anybody? No. If there's some truth in there, is it your information to share? No, it's not at all. when you think about something like gossip and saying things that are helpful, why are you sharing this? Why are you posting this? Why are you telling someone this? Is it just to win an argument? Am I saying something because I just want to prove to you why I'm right and you're wrong and what I'm sharing really isn't helpful at all? Paul writes this in Ephesians 4:21. I think we read it a couple weeks ago. Do not let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouths, but only what is helpful for building others up according to their needs, that it may benefit those who listen. Is what you're saying, is it helpful? Is it encouraging? Is it building others up? Or are you trying to tear someone down because they don't believe politically just like you? And if that is the case, all you're doing is building more division. Use your words to be helpful, to encourage, to build others up. Question number 3 is what I'm going to say personal. Let me go back to social media for just a second. How many responses have you seen on social media before where it's been personal? Where there may be a post and somebody posts something and there might be, here's why I agree with you, here's why I disagree with you, and of course there's anger in that. But then next thing you know, there's like these personal attacks that take place. Someone is personally attacking someone else's family. They're personally attacking maybe where they're from. This is the weird thing that I've seen, and for some reason I keep reading posts and responses, but people are attacking the way people look. There's no mention of the topic. There's no mention of the main post. It is just a flat-out attack, a personal attack on the way someone looks. James actually writes this in James 1:26. If you claim to be religious but don't control your tongue, or, oh, by the way, your fingers, right? You are fooling yourself, and your religion is worthless. Your words matter. Your words carry power. And if you are using them to attack someone else on a personal level, you are creating nothing more but more division. Is what I'm going to say or post or share, is it personal? And then last question 4, is what I'm going to say loving. Hear me out. If you're a follower of Christ, if you say your faith is most important to you, if you say that you are here on this earth to follow Christ, and you're doing everything that you can, then you have to ask yourself, the things that I am posting, the things that I'm saying, the things that I am sharing, are they loving? Because here's the deal. In the end, following Jesus takes precedence over your politics, whatever your politics might be. And yet again, we have a hard time separating our faith filter and our political filter. So we have to ask ourselves, is what I'm going to say, share, post, is it loving? John 13:34, Jesus says this to his disciples. So now I am giving you a new commandment. Love each other. Just as I have loved you, you should love each other. What does this love look like? Well, I think we can go back to what James talked about. Again, it comes to this political arena. It means we are quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. And the reason is we are called to love others just as Jesus loves you and me. And if we're a follower of Christ, we should understand what that love looks like. But maybe you're like, okay, maybe I got an idea what love looks like, but do we really? I think Paul puts it best about love in 1 Corinthians 13. Here's what love is. Love is patient and kind. Love is not jealous or boastful or proud or rude. It does not demand its own way. It is not irritable, and it keeps no record of being wronged. It does not rejoice about injustice, but rejoices whenever the truth wins out. Love never gives up, never loses faith, is always hopeful, and endures through every circumstance. Some of us need to take that passage there in 1 Corinthians 13, and we need to put it as the wallpaper on our phone. So every time we open up our phone, we see what love looks like. We understand what love looks like. We are reminded of what love looks like. Or maybe we need to put it on a Post-it note, and when we open up our laptop, it's right there, and we see it before we get on our laptop. Some of us probably even need to have it tattooed on our forehead. So when we look in the mirror, we're like, okay, this is what love looks like. Because I'm afraid that those of us that are followers of Christ, we have forgotten what love truly looks like. As a follower of Christ, we are not called to be angry people. We're not called to be fighters. We are called to love others, especially for those who say that Jesus is who we follow. And here's the importance behind this. Go back to James 13:35, emphasis mine here. Your love for one another will prove to the world that you are my disciples. If you're a follower of Christ, you have a huge responsibility in this world. And when we don't listen, and when we are quick to speak, and when our first step is anger, when we don't agree with someone politically, guess what? People see that who are not followers of Jesus and just think, that must be how Christians are. So why would I want to follow this Jesus if that's the way you live your life? That's a big responsibility that we carry. And I don't think sometimes we understand that burden. And when we don't listen and we speak quickly and we get angry, Paul says right before the passage on love there, in 1 Corinthians 13, he says, hey, if you don't have love, you're just a noisy gong, you're just a clanging cymbal, you're just a bunch of noise. And you know what? No one wants to hear just a bunch of noise. People want to see people that are transformed, that are changed, that are different, that are quick to listen and slow to speak and slow to become angry, and they're working to understand others, no matter what their political beliefs may be. And as we come into this political season, maybe if you and I begin to put some of these things together, we live them out in our life, we can learn to be more civil. Hear me out. You can vote for whoever you want to vote for. You can be a part of whatever political party you want to be a part of and enjoy whatever platform that political party has. But what if you and I began to put our faith filter ahead of our political filter? What if we were more civil to others who have different opinions than we do? What if we were more Christ-like to others? They're made in the image of God, just like you and me.